Let's begin by revisiting a field full of poppies to discuss a slightly more advanced way of obtaining or an easier way of obtaining a mask. Let's have a look in Google Images here for an image that's got slightly more resolution than the one I was using in earlier videos. And we should be able to find something decent to work with here. If we click on search tools and go for a size that's larger than, let's say, 2 megabytes, and let's see what this brings up. That's quite a nice one there. So if I right click and save this image, we'll call this one obviously poppies. I think there's already one on the desktop there, but we'll replace it. Let's just visit the web page that this is from so that we can give some credit to the image. It may be just a free image, which I think it is, from a wallpaper site. But anyway, that's where that poppies image has come from. That being done, now let's get to the desktop and open that image. And I wanted to discuss the use of using the lab color space for obtaining possible decent channels for selections. Now, this isn't going to be a movie specifically on working in the lab environment. I'm planning to make a whole series of movies that will explain the uses for lab and the lab environment, but let's just stick with this movie just to discuss obtaining a nice selection for these poppies. Now, as you know, if we go to the red channel here, the poppies will be white. They'll be bright in the red channel, but so is the sky, and so is a lot of other things. You can see in the grasses there are lots of white. So the mask here is not so easy to achieve. However, if we go into the lab color space, and if you know your lab environment, you'll know that lab, or red in lab, will be positive in the A channel. If that doesn't make sense to you, just forget about that statement for just a moment, because as I say, we'll be looking at lab in some other movies. But lab is a very weird environment, but very useful in that it separates color from contrast. The lightness, brightness information, contrast is contained in the lightness channel, and then we get the colors in the A and B channels. Knowing the lab environments, we can see that the poppies are positive in the A channel. So that being said, let's copy that. I'll press Ctrl L on the keyboard to bring up the levels palette, and let's grab our handy selection here from this lab environment, and that should do us. I'll just grab a brush and paint in black. And just get rid very quickly of some extraneous bits on the edges there, and you can see very quickly we've grabbed a nice potential mask there. I'm going to zoom in and let's just put a slight blurring on these poppies here. Now, I'm going to explain in another movie, probably the next movie I'm about to make, why we're doing this, why we're putting this slight blurring onto this mask. It's to do with something called choking the mask a little bit later on. So I'll zoom out, Control and minus on the keyboard. Now, it makes the mask is actually the wrong way around at the moment. It needs inverting the colors. We can do that now or later, and that's the thing with masks. It doesn't really matter in the workflow whether you do that now or later when we arrive in the layers palette. I'll do it now just to keep things simple. Control I on the keyboard, that's I for invert, as inverted the mask there. So that being done, now let's try our earlier example of desaturating the image, but keeping the red of the poppies there. So I'll copy the layer, Control J, that's J for jump. I'll desaturate from the keyboard this time, Control Shift and U. That drops the color out. Let's load the channel as a selection. Now you can see it's Control 4 in the palette there. If you press Control Alt 4, it will load. Oops, my mistake. Control Alt 4, it will load that channel as a selection. because there's a selection active on the screen, if I now add my mask, voila, and it's as simple as that. And the reason for showing you this is because many times when we're looking to make a selection based on colour, then lab is usually, a lot of the time, the way to go. It's usually the easiest and most accurate way to do that. Let me just zoom into this image and show you that. Because we're on the mask here, that's the image, this is the mask. If I press Ctrl L, because we blurred the mask earlier on, we can choke the mask, thereby shrinking or widening, increasing the selection as need be. Didn't need it with this image, but there are images when you'll need to do that. So I hope you found that useful. It's really a slight introduction to the lab color environment, and the main thing about lab is that it separates color from contrast. And the reason, once again, I wanted to show you this is because when we're looking for potential channel masks based on color, then lab is a good place to start.